Welcome to the Airline Pilot Podcast. I'm Jason Ambrosi. On January 29th, a collision of PSA Flight 5342 and a Black Hawk military helicopter killed 67 people, including 2 crew members of our ALPA family, Captain Jonathan Campos and First Officer Sam Lilly. This has been devastating for our community, and our hearts are broken for the loved ones of our pilots and all the victims. As the world's largest pilots union, ALPA has extensive resources that we will deploy immediately following a commercial airline accident. Our highly trained pilot volunteers from our acclaimed Critical Incident Response Program are also immediately deployed to crew bases around the system and have been working nonstop to assist any crew members who have been impacted by this tragedy. And as the world's largest non-governmental aviation safety organization, ALPA assists the National Transportation Safety Board, and we have staff and pilot volunteers who will be working on site with the NTSB officials throughout this extensive investigation. Our role in these investigations is very important, as it gives us an opportunity to help uncover the facts of the accident so that we can work with industry stakeholders on ensuring that this doesn't ever happen again. Joining me today to talk about the ways ALPA responds to these accidents is Delta Captain Steve Jangelis, the safety chair of our Air Safety Organization, and United Captain Travis Ludwig, who chairs our Pilot Assistance Committee.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.
Steve, let's start with you. For those that might not be aware of what an NTSB investigation entails, can you walk through how ALPA participates in that process?
Absolutely, Jason. It's a long, proven, and tried and tested process. The airlines have to comply with reporting to the NTSB whenever an accident occurs, and that's governed by NTSB Part 830, which describes the severity of an accident, when it needs to be reported, why it needs to be reported. It also deals with injuries and their severities. And when something does get turned over to the NTSB, they're notified, they deploy a GO team if needed, and they send experts in various aspects of aviation accidents. Those could be in operations, systems, structures, air traffic control, human performance. They've got a number of people on their staff that are able to respond depending on the type of accident. The on-scene investigation and data collection is important to the NTSB as well. So when they start the investigation and working with stakeholders like ALPA, the airlines, the engine manufacturers, the aircraft manufacturer, air traffic controllers, a number of us become a party to an investigation. And what they're going to be looking at is wreckage examination, the flight data and voice recorder retrieval and transcription. They'll be doing witness interviews, going over manuals, air traffic control records, including the radar, aircraft maintenance records, pilot flight logs, previous landing and qualifications, amongst many other things. As the current NTSB chair, Jennifer Hamady, said, we're going to look at everything in the system. It's going to be the aircraft, the human, and the operations. So we're going to be looking at all of those systems whenever the NTSB puts together a GO team to investigate an aircraft accident.
So you mentioned parties, and ALPA is a party to this investigation. What does that mean?
So when they designate a group or a stakeholder as a party, it usually means they have direct involvement or they can supply knowledge, subject matter experts to the investigation. So with if it was in the case of ALPA, it would be because our pilots were involved in the accident or could provide some information to the operation that the NTSB could use. So the goal of people that are involved in the party status is not to investigate for the NTSB. It's to supply subject matter experts and expertise for the investigation so the NTSB can put together a final report. We are there to just help and assist, and we're at the direction of the NTSB throughout the whole process.
But our people are, if you're party status, our people are right there with them, going through all of the same stuff that they're doing.
Yes, and when they determine what they need, it depends on the accident, what happens, where it ends up. They'll convene. It's never an open playbook. It's always determined there at the accident site by the NTSB about what they're going to form: operations groups, systems, structures, air traffic control. Those groups get formed on an as needed basis. So the best part about it is that ALPA has subject matter experts available to the NTSB in all of those areas.
So obviously we see media reports. Everybody's out there speculating on what is going on, what happened. Everybody, rushes to judgment, rushes to get into, especially in the digital age where everybody's got a cell phone camera. Tell us why it's so important that people don't rush to judgment and everybody become a reporter.
Absolutely. With everything that we have going on in the media world, we have video and instantaneous gratification of things that happen out there, whether it's a car accident or a plane accident, or just everyday visuals that people can pass an instant judgment and say, I know exactly what happened. We don't rush to judgment. If we think we have the answer, we probably don't. We're going to get together with all of the stakeholders in the room, the NTSB, all the OEMs, the manufacturers, and sit down and say, okay, here's all the data we have. These are the facts. So now let's come up with a probable cause.
So let's shift a little bit from the technical that you are an expert in and getting your hands dirty looking into why, when, how, to the human a little bit. So Travis, when an accident like this happens, what resources are available for our pilots who are understandably affected by a tragedy like this?
Oh, absolutely. Great question, Jason. Yeah, so Critical Incident Response Program, that's the program that ALPA runs for any of these accidents or incidents that happen at work related. Specifically, we have kind of a two-frame process for this. So we send a group of CIRP folks with the accident investigators. They actually don't go on scene with them. They stay back at the hotel, and then every night we have a conversation and just a chat with them. And it's a good confidential pilot-to-pilot chat to see how they're doing, to see how they're feeling. At the same time, we simultaneously launch CIRP representatives back to any of the offices around the system that might be affected. We also have the availability to use the ALPA hotline to get a hold for pilots to reach out to CIRP individuals if they need to speak to somebody.
It's an essential service that you guys provide to help pilots when they need it. What would you say to the pilot that might say they're struggling, they're internalizing it, but they don't want to look, let's say, for lack of a better term, weak by calling or asking for help?
Right. I think that's such an important question. We really understood that the trauma that was being induced at these very high levels had lasting effects on people. We are no different than them in this particular time where we see this deep trauma and event. Having an ability to speak about it to someone else confidentially, to speak your mind, can be very cathartic and help that person heal from that tragedy so the trauma can be lessened. And that's what our CIRP folks are trained to do. And I'd like to also point out that CIRP in this critical incident is not just for PSA pilots, but for all of our union members. They will respond whether it was a person who was at PSA and flowed to another airline or whether it's a person that was on the end of the runway and watched it happen. They could be affected, and our CIRP reps are available for those folks also.
Yeah, obviously that's a great point, Travis, because it could go beyond just the people that are directly involved with the accident. It's got broader impacts on all of us. All right, Steve, back to you. You oversee more than 450 volunteer experts who are, deployed at a moment's notice when something like this occurs, pilots and staff. Can you speak to the knowledge that they have and how helpful those folks are to the investigation?
Absolutely. We take ALPA safety volunteers in whether you have many, many years of experience and advanced degrees, or you have zero experience. We start you from the beginning. We take you through our ALPA safety training. And those who are thinking about going down the track of getting into accident investigation, we have two separate accident investigation schools. One is more of a sit down, basically, because it talks about the rules, the regulations, and the processes involved in an investigation. The final class, or as we call it, the final exam, is a course that we run. ALPA sets it up, provides it, and administers it up at the University of North Dakota, where we use an actual aircraft and we do a mock investigation. And I think some of the best compliments I've received from our volunteers has been that, your training got me ready for this investigation, because we run it just like an NTSB investigation would be run. And we come up with some of the twists and turns that you may come up with. They may say, well, hey, we just found parts over here. Or, hey, guess what? We just realized that the voice recorder does not work. So we give them those scenarios. So when the students are out of that course, they are ready day one to go and do an NTSB investigation. Now, a story that comes to mind is the Colgan Air accident. When that happened, they had just joined our union. They had no one trained, no one through our courses. They were a very young pilot group. And one asset that we have here at ALPA National is the Accident Investigation Board. The chairman is Captain Jeff Perrin from Spirit Airlines, and he oversees a group of people that have experience in NTSB investigations and accidents and can provide the resources to every property at ALPA, whether they have a lot of experience in accidents or no experience. We give them that expertise. Whether you have 5 airplanes or 500, you will get the same response from ALPA National, its pilots, its staff that are involved, and every air carrier can be a part of this.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in there too. We're the same on the PA side, that very much that when that call came out for CIRP support all around the system, obviously PSA was a small carrier and didn't have enough trained volunteers. So we were able to reach out to all of the other carriers that have the CIRP volunteers, some of them based in those very places, some of them live there, made it a much more intimate process for them to be able to get to know these individuals that they could talk to, kind of build that bridge to start that process. So I think it's really an asset that we have.
One of the big things about CIRP, it's not just for the pilots of the airline that's involved. It's also for our investigators. The investigators may be involved in areas that might not be comfortable for them or might be in their comfort zone. And so Travis's volunteers come out and speak to our investigators and provide them support as well. This isn't just for the airline and its pilots. It's also for our own people. And it's a valuable asset because accident investigation, it's, they have the TV shows and they show them, and it seems like very interesting work, and it's forensic science, but you can see some things that might affect you. And so having the resource of Travis and his team available to us is a huge help.
That's certainly complimentary, because you can train for years until you're actually put in that position of having to deal with a tragedy like this. None of us know exactly how you're going to react or be affected by something like this. I think what makes our pilot assistance program so special is the connection it makes with pilots with their peers. It's the best of both worlds because they get to talk to a peer who really understands what they're going through and has specialized training to help them. How do you, Travis, see this invaluable resource being a help to pilots in a situation like this?
Yeah, I think it's really like having a good friend who has a lot more resources, who has been down that road, who knows some things. We train our peers both in CIRP and pilot peer support, PPS, in this kind of active listening skills, right? The ability to kind of listen to the story, not get involved in it, help that person speak these things out, and then also have a wealth of knowledge of what resources we have available within our union. How else those folks? We tell them they don't have to know all the answers. They just have to know where to point them to the right direction. It's so important. Yeah.
What kind of training do you do for those members, making the phone calls or receiving the phone calls?
Right. It's a lengthy process. CRP first is accredited by the ICISF program. This is a program that represents all of critical incident response management throughout the world. So our folks, should we have an accident on our shores and we were closest to it, we could actually respond because there is a ops manual, a specification of how they respond, and they're all trained to the same level. So we could respond to an accident that may not even be an ALPA individual, which is nice because we know we're helping out. And then our peer support folks also go through a similar training, one that we developed over many hours of work. And in that process, they learn a lot of the same basic skills. However, the real difference between CIRP and PPS, and I think this accident really highlights it, is a critical incident at work is a trauma-related event, and the response to that is much different than one might have that we would send you to a PPS, which would be financial concerns, divorce, some of these long-term issues that are going to go on. And so while our CRP folks have the lead on this very much so, at some point, if someone is still having issues, we would move them over to more of a peer support model, PPS model, that would help them kind of transition into how do I get better, how do I continue to get better.
That makes sense. So this will be for both of you, because you're, Steve, more the technical guy, and you're the peer support, Travis. So what do you want, what else, other than what we've covered, do you want our pilots to know about this, what you do, what these programs offer? Steve, go ahead.
When an accident happens, we expect like an instant gratification or an instant solution about what happened, and we would like to make sure that, no stone is unturned. It takes months, if not years, to come up with a final report for an accident. So I would ask for patience as we investigate, because we want to investigate all angles to come up with a probable cause and a list of safety enhancements and providing those to the industry to do better so that this doesn't happen again. So I would ask for patience. Patience is probably the most important expectations I could ask of an ALPA pilot while we're investigating. We gather a number of safety experts and bring them in throughout the investigation. And like I say, it sometimes takes months, if not years, to come up with a probable cause and a final report. Throughout that process, our subject matter experts are engaging with stakeholders, meeting with them, talking about, here's what we've recommended before. These are some things we think that could enhance. And the goal of this is to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I can tell you something right now. I believe we're safe because of prior investigations and recommendations that were made and adopted by the industry.
Very well. Travis.
Yeah, that's great. I really think for me, it's getting into a paradigm shift of what we consider mental health versus physical health. So if I could use a little analogy, if you had a finger cut, you wouldn't just leave it. It might get infected. You'd cover it. You'd put Band-Aids on it. You do some of that kind of preventive care. That's really where what our folks, our peers, are so well trained to do, is to be able to help you self-assess into that. So really the thought of treating mental health and physical health the same, getting the same help that you need, having a confidential place and a well-trained peer to help you kind of navigate the process of all of the bumps and the pains that can come with mental health, just like a physical health.
I'd like to thank you for your leadership on mental health, not only for this situation, but on pushing this subject forward as we have over the last 12 months, your leadership on the FAA rulemaking committee and everything. It's definitely bringing it to the forefront at this point. So, and Steve, thank you for your leadership as the safety chair. I know these are not easy times for any of us, but knowing that we have people, volunteers like you, that are corralling these resources for our 79,000 members makes us proud that you guys are there helping these folks. Anything else you guys want to add before we wrap it?
I think that if anyone was willing to do this work and is willing to volunteer, please raise your hand. Let us know. Get in contact with us. We'd love to plug you in. People that are successful in accident investigation and technical studies sometimes came to us with zero knowledge in their back pocket or advanced degrees or any of that. We can train you up and get you up to speed. Again, it does not matter what size of the airline or what aircraft you fly. We can put you to work. So raise your hand. We'll be there.
Very good. Very good.
Absolutely agree. We would love to have some more support. Obviously, this is a time of growth, both for us as a union and then specifically in mental health, as you mentioned. It's becoming such an issue. The more volunteers we have, we can spread that love out, and everybody gets a chance to help out. And it's a really good feeling, a volunteer's high, as we call it.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you both for joining us today. In the face of this tragedy, you both have been beacons for our pilots. We're grateful to have leaders in these areas that are as passionate as you are and as passionate as you are knowledgeable. The 67 lives that were lost weigh heavy on us all. When the investigation is complete and we have all available facts, ALPA will respond and lobby for whatever changes to prevent this tragedy from ever being repeated. If you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach out to podcast@alpa.org. To listen and subscribe to the Airline Pilot Podcast or learn more about ALPA, check us out online at alpa.org or find us on all major podcast platforms. Until next time, this is the Airline Pilot Podcast, production copyright ALPA 2025, all rights reserved. Thank you and have a safe flight.